All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar on winning the professional services sale. If you're in the US, good morning. If, like me, you are in Europe, good evening, good afternoon. And I'm especially honored today to be doing this with my friend Aaron Ross, someone who I have great respect for. We pulled together an amazing session for you guys. We're going to keep this very interactive. We're going to keep it very tight. We're going to share a lot of detail, a lot of processes, a lot of insider tips and tactics. This is not going to be one of those webinars where we'll go through slide after slide and just tell you a dry story. We are going to go into great detail and really going to the nitty gritty stuff. So with that, let me welcome my co-host, Aaron. Welcome to this webinar.
There I go. And I said we've got also milkshakes and Ferraris and who knows what else here in
Oh
next.
man, we've got a we got a ton of
Say,
surprise. Oh, we got pictures of cute kids. We've got a very old salesman, pitching in the middle of a presentation somewhere. We do have pictures of Ferraris,
uh,
and yeah, it's absolutely awesome. All right.
um, so yeah, I'm happy to be here. And Ago, you and I have talked, and what we want to do is put together some ideas specifically for people in professional services, because selling professional services is different than selling a product. So that's the basic idea here.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give people a bit of a backstory, the way this all happened is you came on as a guest in the Coaching Master Series, which is an online interview series that I ran, that I'm running, that I've been running so for about a year or so, a bit over a year. And I actually read your book, Predictable Revenue, and that's how I found out about you and your stuff. And I thought, well, Aaron's doing a lot of stuff in the tech space and doing a lot of stuff in the software space, but I think what he's doing is very applicable to professional services.
Hmm.
And so we just really wanted to put one and one together in this webinar and talk about how to apply your processes and your methods in the professional services sphere. So, all right,
Yep.
let's take it away.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so here's some samples of stuff we'll cover, like basically the top mistake that consultants and sellers make, what the top 5% of rainmakers do, some simple messaging mind tricks, which are really neat and make a big difference in your messaging, the three pillars of successful lead generation, and a couple key ideas in actually bringing in the revenue, closing sales. So, Ago, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, I guess I would say my career has been split sort of three ways, 30. I started life as a professional life as a management consultant. I worked for two out of the big four consulting firms selling high-end management consulting services. And then I went into industry. I became a manager and later an executive in a top 50 financial services firm. And during all that time, it's about a decade or so, I did no selling whatsoever. So I did a lot of buying. And I think that reflects in the way that I view sales and selling. I still think half my brain's still in buying mode and the other half's in selling mode. And that makes for some interesting schizophrenia sometimes, but also for some interesting approaches and ideas. And then finally, for the last 4 or 5 years or so, I've been running my own business, now practice director EMEA at Ring Group. And I mean, we basically specialize in high-end complex sales of services primarily to senior buyers, executives, and management in mid-sized and large corporations. And so, three things about me you should know is I love to sell, but I'm not a salesperson. I've never held a full-time sales role. I've always sold as part of what I do. I sold and delivered. I was a seller doer, as we say. Always did consulting and then also selling the projects. I still bought probably more than I sold. I did the count the other day. I'm getting to a couple of tens of millions of dollars where either I was the buyer, I was the person selling, or I was in the room and influencing the buying or selling process. And so to this day, I've still bought more than I sold. And honestly, Aaron, between me and selling, it certainly wasn't love at first sight. I had a lot of inhibitions about selling, a lot of hangups about what selling was and what salespeople were. And my first sales meeting was an
I don't
absolute.
want to be pushy. You don't want
Yeah,
to,
exactly. We've all, I'll tell you the story one day about the first secondhand car I ever bought, but every single stereotype that we know about, sort of the sleazy, slimy salesperson, I encountered on that day But anyway, that would take us too far. Aaron, why don't you, for the folks on the webinar that may not know you yet, why don't you talk a little bit about
Yep.
yourself, predictable revenue?
Yep. So I was the author of a #1 best-selling book, Predictable Revenue, which recently was actually the top-selling sales ebook on Amazon. And a lot of the business, the ideas from this book came from working at Salesforce.com, where I helped create a prospecting team, an outbound sales process that helped bring in an extra $100 million at Salesforce. And so learned a lot at Salesforce, and then since then I've been consulting and writing about it. I'm also a father of 4 kids, of which we're actually adopting 2 more next year, so it'll be 6 in about a year. And a fun fact is, since leaving Salesforce, and by the way, this $100 million was not mine, that was Salesforce's, so I still need to work and have had to work to make money, but I've stuck to a 25-hour work week for several years now, which takes practice, actually. Well, all right, with that, let me start off with, I find if you're in professional services, there's these hidden beliefs that are pretty common. So for example, that you're just going to do great work and clients will just find you magically, or that word of mouth is enough for your business. And another one is that like more clients are better. It's this idea that more work is better, more clients are better. And what we want to help is, bring you, it's not puncture these beliefs, but it's really bring some more practical tips to how do you, if you want to bring in more regular income or grow your business, okay, these are not going to work for you. What are some real tips that will help you be practical and real about driving revenue with your business? Now, if you've read the book, or I'm sure that you picked up, some of you may not have read it. One thing that's really important to understand is that salespeople don't drive revenue. Lead generation drives revenue. So a lot of what we're going to cover today is about lead generation. Because you can have the best sales process in the world, but if you have crummy lead generation, you're going to struggle. If you have great lead generation, you could have a crummy sales process and still do pretty well. So let me start off with this first idea, and I can't remember where I heard this in the first place, but the idea is pick a niche, get rich. Now, a lot of people in your business may feel like you're pushing hard, but not getting anywhere fast. And this is my baby daughter, Pari, who she's about 1.5 years now, likes to try to cruise around on her pink scooter. Sometimes she speeds around, but sometimes she just is going nowhere, pushing hard. And I find a lot of businesses are this way. And one of the common problems, or maybe the most common problem, especially in services, is that you're afraid to specialize, to really become an expert. Now, this is me. This is because when I left Salesforce.com, I didn't want to do sales consulting, or I didn't want to do, again, I built a prospecting team at Salesforce, which almost doubled their growth. That was really, what I was a true expert in, what I was the best in the world in. But I didn't want to do it for different reasons. It's like I've already done that. It's boring. It's too small, too specific. It's not sexy. I'm going to be limited. And I've seen this time and time again with companies where you're so afraid to specialize in something narrow for these different reasons that you become too general and you sound like this company. Because this is from a past client, but when you're targeting everyone, trying to do everything, no one cares. Like when someone writes this, like when you read this, it sounds silly. It's, Acme provides professional consulting services to develop and support online business solutions. From startup to Fortune 500 companies, Acme assists clients to maximize the return on investment in the cloud by providing implementation, development, and value-added software solutions. Now, to you, this probably sounds like you have no idea what you're talking about. But I'm sure if I read your website, it probably would sound just as confusing to me, because again, you're afraid to specialize. So it's the idea that the sun warms you, but if you have a magnifying glass, you can start a fire. So to actually what you do about this is, you really, in order to be effective at lead generation, you have to specialize. You have to be focused. And to get a better sense of where to focus, look back at who have been your ideal customers. Get as specific as you can. Where have you had the best results, brought in the most revenue, and you had this sort of a unique approach. Where are you a specialist? Or in other words, what would you be the king or queen of the world of if you could just do one thing? Now, if you built websites, that's very general. Maybe really your specialty is designing landing pages or landing page buttons. You know, um, I think that sometimes it takes some time to figure this out, but it's really what are you a true expert in? Like when people call you, what's the one thing that they always want you for? Ago, what do you think about this?
Oh, Aaron, I couldn't agree more. And let me just say this: my own business completely started turning around when I understood the power of this. This is not just about, this is not just about saying be specific about who you serve. This is really about understanding what is your business foundation. What are the fundamentals of your business? And it's not only about understanding and being specific or a specialist about who you serve, but it's really also about what are your unique strengths? What do you do better than anybody else out there?
Hmm.
Maybe there's a certain combination of industry expertise and process that you have, kind of like you, Aaron. I mean, software sales, revenue generation, lead generation. And the way I started thinking about it is really I often get these questions. People tell me, okay, I understand, I get it. I need a niche or I need a niche, depending on where in the world you are. And I understand that, but how do I do that? And there's a lot of misunderstandings because people either assume that there's this concern about still, going into too much detail and losing out on potential customers. And on the other end, there's a lot of people that, I think go overboard and they become ultra specific. And then, that's not right either. So the way I started looking at it is, and this a lot of this is 80/20. Don't try to perfect it in any way. Just try to get it, as best as you can. But when you start combining three dimensions, and I just put three examples up here on the screen,
Yeah.
it's
So
industry
this is an
function.
example. Yeah, great examples, but you have to take the principles and apply it to yourself.
Well, yeah, exactly. So let me just do that right here on the call. What's the industry that I serve? Well, I serve industries like management consulting, financial services, and systems integration primarily. We also do legal services, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really kind of it's either services or it's a product with a strong services component attached to it. Then the function. What are the kind of people that I serve? Well, they're typically managing partners. They're directors. They are partners of professional services firms. They may be C-suite executives, but if they are, they're not the CFO. They're not the CIO. They're typically like a chief sales officer or a CEO, or in some cases a CFO. And geography. My region is very much EMEA, and even more specific than that, it is really metropolitan areas within Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So that's pretty specific. And here's a little trick that you can use in order to know that you really have it. If you can go on something like a LinkedIn or like a Zoom info, and you can almost you can put in these criteria and come up with a reasonably manageable list. That's when you know you've got it. That's when you know you've gone specific enough. By the way, Aaron, let me just say a little bit of housekeeping here. I forgot to mention in the beginning. Aaron and I really want to make this very, very interactive and very open. So whenever you feel that you want us to go into more detail onto something, if you have a question, please don't hesitate. Put your questions in the question box. Look forward to answering those questions. So with that, Matt, Aaron, let's move it forward.
Yep. So let's move on to the second idea, which I call sell ideas, not stuff. Yeah, we know everyone's got stuff to sell. And it's pretty common, at least in Silicon Valley, to hear companies talk about being, we provide a leading next generation scalable social platform for crowd-funded glazed eye jargonation. I mean, you get a bunch of this, especially after they've raised money, a bunch of just gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything. They're so infatuated with their stuff, their platforms, that they forget to communicate it to you, to other people in English. But here's a great example of selling an idea. They're not selling, like they're selling this idea that website optimization can be made easy. Right? So it's like, that's an idea. Or with my daughter Aurora, who's 10, she doesn't if she wants to go for donuts, she doesn't sell me the idea of, hey Dad, let's go get donuts. I want you to get me a donut. She says the idea she sells is, Dad, we have so much fun when we go for donuts. The idea of fun. And I think again, you have features to what you're selling. Like it might be a button, or again, there's a service you're selling, and then there's a benefit to that. But even more important, when you're doing lead generation and you're getting the word out there, is what is the idea you're selling? So, for example, Salesforce.com did a great job selling the idea of on-demand or cloud, right? So they have features around their CRM pipeline, this or that. There's benefits to better insight, but really the idea was you could do all this on demand. Not have computers, servers, and software and such. Now, okay, what do you do with this? Well, here's first few tips, and I'll give you a matrix to help you flesh out your ideas. But when you're selling ideas, the important thing is that you want to, so let's say you're writing, it could be a book, blog post, events, and you start coming up with marketing ideas, and you want to create with a passion for customer success. So it's not about selling to them. It's like, oh, what does it take to make them successful? Part of which is my product or service. And you want it when you're, again, coming up with your materials or messaging, the ideas need nothing. Don't be desperate. Come to this with an idea that you really just want to help clients. Another aspect is truth is the best form of marketing. I think a lot of people get nervous about the idea of marketing or selling. But honestly, if you just stick to the truth, you want to help them, you can help them, here's how you can help them, here's what they're doing wrong, that'll be a great guiding light. And last thing is I think this is an important point, is the best ideas are independent of your stuff. So for example, going back to that Optimizely's website that said, hey, website optimization can be made easy. Because a lot of people feel like it's hard. I do. And if they make the case, and again, it could be in a blog post, an ebook, or who knows what, but they start to sell the idea that website optimization can be easy, and if you buy into that, then you're naturally going to be interested in, oh, well, what kinds of tools can they offer you to do it, right? Salesforce.com, again, made the idea of cloud or on-demand. So people bought into that, the value of it, and then they likely go down to, okay, well, that makes sense. What kinds of stuff can you offer to help me actually do that? Now, okay, what do you do with this? How do you make this practical? I have a blog post up that sort of walks you through how to put together a matrix and say, what are your ideas? What kinds of ideas could be useful to people that would they be interested in? And you could check it out at predictablerevenue.com/matrix. But it's not that hard. If you just sit down for a little bit of time, even 20, 30 minutes with yourself, a couple of your teammates, you can always come up with some good ideas that would appeal to your customer base. All right, I go.
Yeah, Aaron, can I just really quickly?
Yeah, mute.
Yes, I was, and now I'm no longer. So I'm back, everybody. Now here's a couple of practical things, and I love the idea of this matrix because this alone it can be so rich and can give you so many ideas on how to position yourself, how to craft your value proposition, how to communicate and convey your service in a way that makes sense to your audience, how to produce content for thought leadership and content marketing. This is tremendously powerful. And there are two things that I would recommend in addition to this, which you can do before or after, or even at the same time of doing this. And the first one is really to do something called a buyer persona. You can just Google it. I'm not going to go into great detail, but it's really a very human way of thinking about your prospect and thinking about what they're struggling with, what are their pains, what are their afflictions, but also what do they want, what are their aspirations, what do they crave, what do they need in their life or their business. Because we often forget, especially in complex high-end B2B sales, that there's a human element there. There's no denying it. A lot of decisions behind closed doors are made based on emotion, based on sentiment, based on feeling. So that's the first thing.
All of them, I'd say.
Yeah, well, behind closed doors, all of them. But then we come out and we rationalize them because we need to present something to the board, and you can't just say I like these. It can't just be I like these guys. And the second thing is tremendously powerful is just go out and ask your clients. I mean, ask your past clients why did you buy from me? What was the pain that you had that you wanted me to solve? And I know this sounds, I mean, to me, this sounds almost like obvious, but I still come across so many clients that just simply don't do it. It is so powerful. You can do this with surveys. You can do it one-on-one. I do this, this is a part of my routine. It's almost like whenever I know there's a couple of people, there's a fair amount of people on the webinar that I've been emailing back and forth with, and if you were here, I'd ask you in the room, and I'd say, did you ever get an email from me where it said something like, "P.S. Is there anything in your business that you're struggling with, or is there anything I can help you with right now, or I'm thinking about an idea for my next blog post. What would you like me to go into?" And that is just so powerful, and that's where you get these ideas, right?
Yeah. And just more example, I mean, the title, so my book, Predictable Revenue, that itself is an idea. I saw is that revenue can be predictable. And if you've read the book, the idea of specialization, there's a lot of ideas in the book. And I think a lot of the best ideas really come from this place of you want to help people. The ideas are useful whether or not they hire you for something. Right? And then that's because those ideas are the kinds that really appeal to people where there's value, and they want the ideas, and they pass them to their friends. So again, if you come up with great ideas, again, whether it's matrix, I think the buyer persona approach is a good complement to it. It's important. It really will help you have people buy into your idea, into your brand, and be interested and start to want to learn more about you and how you can help them. Okay. So let's move on to the third point here, which is around messaging. Now, I love this old Far Side cartoon. At the top, it says, "What we say to dogs." Okay, Ginger, I've had it. You stay out of the garbage. Understand, Ginger? Stay out of the garbage or else. And what the dogs hear, of course, is blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, blah, blah. And this is really how most companies market to their customers. So now, likewise, with again, I mentioned my 10-year-old daughter, Aurora, who's sort of my sales apprentice. I've been teaching her how, like, if she wants a milkshake, you don't just go up to your parent and say, "Dad, can you get me a milkshake? Mom, can you get me a milkshake? I want a milkshake." No, you come up and you frame it in why is it a benefit to a parent to get you a milkshake? So it's pretty funny actually watching her use techniques on Mom, but here she is with a milkshake, very happy. And I think it's an important point to understand that when you're marketing to people, they don't care about what you do. They don't care that you have you do accounting and the way you do it. What they care about is what you can do for them. What do they get out of working with you? So this is some really simple mind tricks to help you take the way that you're currently talking about or writing about your business and to reshift it away from what you do to how you help. So again, if you ask me what I do, if I say, "Hey, I'm a sales author or sales coach," you're like, "So what?" But if I tell you about the result, which is, well, we help companies double or triple their revenue growth, it's a lot more interesting. So that's the kind of effect you want. So this first question, if you're at a party and someone comes up to you and asks you, what do you do? Pretend they ask you instead, how do you help customers, or how do you help people? It'll automatically reframe your mind to start thinking about the result that you help clients get. Another thing is, if you're, again, writing, marketing, some blog post or whatever you're doing, again, this could be, whether it's a phone conversation, blog post, website, doesn't matter. You say, "All right, we help clients, get their books in order." Okay, so then every time you have a point like that, ask yourself, "So what?" Or, "What's so great about that?" Well, if their book's in order, they can close their books on time every month. Okay, so what? Well, that way they can provide accurate reports to the board on time. Okay, so what? Well, they can also get reports to the government on time. Okay, so what? Well, they're in compliance and don't have to pay fines or go to jail. So you go down this path of starting with what you do, and by asking these questions, especially like a "so what" or "what's so great about that," you can get closer and closer towards, okay, what's the value of it to clients? What's the result that clients want? And one way you can test this is if you're talking to let's say you meet again at a party, you meet an ideal client, and you're chatting with them, and within 30 seconds or a minute or two, if they don't really sort of get what you're talking about, or at least they're not interested in it, then you got to refine or change what you're saying. Take another stab at it. Because again, ideal clients, not just everybody, but if they really are there, they should get it pretty quickly if you've honed in on a simple way to describe what you do. At least, and not in an accurate, but a simple way to describe what you do that's intriguing enough for them to want to learn a bit more and learn a bit more.
Hey, Aaron,
All right.
can I walk people
Well, let
through
me
a
see.
very
Pause.
I'm sorry, I think we got some lag on the line here. Can
Yeah.
I just walk them through a very, very fast three-step process that we use to do this? I get a lot of
Yeah.
questions around, how do I craft a value proposition, right? How do I craft a compelling value proposition, a compelling message that allows me to connect with my intended audience or my prospects or my potential clients, and gets them to sit up and pay attention to what I'm saying. And there's really three steps to it, and it's pretty simple. And the first step is really to resonate. Now, you can only resonate if you've done what we talked about before. If you really talk to people about what are their pains, what are their needs, the stuff that we talked about in the buyer persona in your matrix. So you really want to get a deep understanding for what the things that people care about are, and the things that people really need help with. Now, we call those afflictions and aspirations to make it simple. What are the pains they have? Or I like to make it even more simple. I like to talk about which things do people want to get away from, and which things do people want to move towards or get more of. So once you have that, you can start resonating because you can start talking about those things. And what's going to happen is people are going to start to catch on, and you're going to find yourself in a conversation pretty quickly. And then the second step, so the first step is to resonate. The second step is to substantiate, or to differentiate. Now, differentiate is that answer the question, so what? Or the question, okay, not what's so great about that, but what's so great about you? Why are you different, right? Because there's a ton of people out there doing what you do, and so you want to find a way of making it memorable, and getting people to sort of have it in the back of their heads. Stories are awesome to do that. So a great way to differentiate is to talk about a past client, and the kind of results that you've gotten for them. A great way to differentiate is to talk about things in a different language than most people would use. Personally, I find that plainly spoken words are very powerful. Stay away from the buzzwords. Just kind of, tell them the way it is. And then the third step, so first is resonate. Second step is differentiate. And the third step is really substantiate. And that's where you talk about, the proof is in the pudding, right? The kinds of results that you've gotten for clients. And I guarantee that if you do only those three things, like let's say you walk into a party or a networking event, you wrote these three words down on a cocktail napkin or your business card or something. And after a while, I promise you'll start memorizing these. And you did only that the whole evening. I promise you'd walk away with some very good conversations, which are probably very different from what you would normally get at a networking event, where maybe you ask a question and then people start answering, and talking about themselves and their business. Hey, Aaron, is it okay if we throw in a couple of questions at this point? I can see some questions coming into the comments box.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't we? And
So
by the way, I think that just you can see how if you start with, for example, like the sell ideas, not stuff matrix to get a better sense of pains, maybe buyer persona, and then that can lead you to some of these simple messaging tricks around just getting a basic sense of how to, resonate with people. And then you can develop it with a little more detail with the three steps Ago's talking about here, which is resonate, differentiate, substantiate, so that it's like step by step you get more specific and flesh it out and improve your messaging.
absolutely. And the one thing that we both very much agree on is, what you put in there around, if people don't get it, then either change it, or I wouldn't say I walk away, but it's unlikely to be a prospect for you. The fit is
Yeah.
unlikely to be there, right? So, all right, John had a great question here. He asked, "What is a manageable list size?" And then he kind of specified it a little bit more. He said, "What I mean is list size in regards to a niche list, as opposed to a general lead list that you mass market to." So I think his question is around, I understand, I have a general lead list, a large list of people, but how do I niche that down, and what's a good size for each individual niche? Any thoughts on that, Aaron?
Um, it all depends on what you're using it for. I always think, for example, and we'll get to this actually in in some ideas around the three pillars of lead generation. But if you're doing prospecting, you can target a smaller number of companies than if you're doing some kind of marketing, broader number. But I think that if it's not so much the size of the niche, it's really how specific are you in it. How clear are you around the kinds of companies that would need what you've got? Yes, I know that everybody could use what you sell, but who are the people most likely to need it? And I think that's a hard part for people to let go of, which is, well, everyone could use my soap cleaner. Yeah, but who are the people most likely to need it enough that they're going to buy? Because it's a big hurdle to go talk to people who've never heard of you and get them interested enough to actually want to take next steps and actually put money down for what you're selling. So I would think, several hundred to a couple of low thousands would be a reasonable starting point if he's looking for a number.
Yeah, you know what? Let me give
But
you, let me, first off, I agree to a certain degree with what you're saying. I think in certain businesses, a couple of hundred is a good size list to get started. In other businesses, we're talking much larger. We've got a question upcoming also on B2C versus B2B. And so in B2C, you'll find that you'll need larger lists, I think. Um, but let me give you the other
yeah,
extreme. What I've done very successfully is go completely the opposite way and literally trim my list to 25 people. I've done that and very successfully. And obviously, when you do that, you want to make absolutely sure that you pick the right people. So we're talking about, I mean, when I'm selling high-end professional services to C-suite executives in a very particular industry, and in my case, probably in a very specific region, I will sometimes develop a very, very targeted list of anywhere between 20 to 30 people. Now, these people are not people that I do. Let me be very clear. I don't mass market to these people. These are not people that I send out, my email newsletter to. It's much more up close and personal. It's much more based on referrals. It's much more based on a personal touch. It's much more based on doing everything that's antithetic to what everybody else is doing. But that's just another approach. And so what I'm saying here also is list size, John, is very it's very specific to your industry and your objectives. I will take a 25-person list of motivated, qualified decision makers with a need and a budget for what I'm selling any day over a list of 999 potentially maybe somehow qualified prospects who may or may not have a need and may or may not want to buy from me. So that's just a very personal perspective on that. Aaron, question from Alessandra here. What ideas do you have for lead generation for B2C service professionals? Or your stuff seems to be geared towards the B2B community. And Alessandra, first thing I'll say about that is we're obviously talking about professional services here. But Aaron, any thoughts on how this applies to B2B or B2C?
yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect lead into the lead generation, this three pillars. So, for example, and we can take these ideas, and I think these ideas actually can apply. You can take it and apply it to B2B or B2C. Now, I know Ago, you have you mentioned you like to zig when people zag.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the
Is
example
something
that
that's been,
this is the
yeah.
example that I
Go
just
ahead.
gave, right? So 60% of marketers are now using inbound marketing in some form. And Aaron, when you and I first started talking, and after I'd read your book, I really, I should say, reopened my eyes to the value of outbound marketing versus inbound marketing. And let me be very clear. I mean, I love inbound marketing. I love producing
Great.
content and thought leadership, and I do a lot of it, and I get results from it. And I also have restarted doing outbound marketing. Let me tell you what I mean. When I came out of my corporate career, I mean, it was a sort of time stood still, and I came back out of my cave, right? And I thought outbound marketing or outbound lead generation was cold calling. So I went out, and this was maybe about 5 years ago. I went out and I started doing cold calls again, and man, did I suffer. I mean, I was getting no results. This used to work when I was a management consultant. I mean, I remember it. It didn't work very well, but it kind of worked still, and it was horrible. I mean, I was getting when I started measuring, I was appalled by the results that I was getting for all this effort that I was putting in, and all this energy that I was putting in, and all this drain on my self-esteem and my energy, and I was getting nothing in return. And one of the things, and I'd love for you, Aaron, to talk about this in some degree of detail, is that outbound marketing and outbound sales and lead generation is a process. And it's not about using one channel or technique versus another. It's really about stacking different things on top of each other and then measuring what works.
Yeah. So what I would suggest, I'm sorry, what was the person who asked the question about B2C? Let me give you a general answer now as I go through this slide. And then if you can actually submit your question telling us exactly what you do, what you sell, and so on. I think at the end when we have Q&A, we can give you a more specific answer. Let me start here. I think it's really important, this is what I saw at Salesforce in the last few years, is to understand these three different kinds of leads and lead generation. Right? There's seeds, which are really word of mouth. You know, your relationships, referrals, happy customers. Then there's nets, which is your broadcasted marketing. And now inbound marketing is the hot term. And so this is about quantity over quality. So with marketing, you get a lot of leads, but only a small number are really good. And then outbound sales, outbound prospecting are spears, that you're being very targeted about who you're going after. And this is about quality over quantity. So fewer, better, bigger leads. Now, all three of these are different. You generate the leads in different ways. They've got different funnels or conversion rates. There's different ways you handle them when they come into you or when you go out to them. And so it's important to know that, and by the kind of business in which you do, sometimes one is more effective than the other, although they all can be important. So, for example, the B2C question. You know, if you're only making, you know, a small amount of money, like let's say $50 or $150, maybe $500 per customer, outbound prospecting is just not, it's going to be really, really hard to be profitable. Maybe you can do it, probably not. More effective would be seeds and nets. And, you know, so with seeds, one of the best ways to get more, what I'd recommend is by having live events is one of the best ways to, you know, by including your current customers, to draw on your current relationships and where you live, and either bring in clients and prospects maybe to meet together, and you can teach them something. But live events is one of the best ways to improve, get to learn as well as grow your seeds. Maybe depending on what you do with, again, B2C, inbound marketing or PPC or other things could work. That's why it's hard to say without knowing what you do. But regardless of what kind of business you're in, you know, the seeds are usually where your business gets started, right? Relationships, people you know, people who know you. And then as you want to grow, you start to do more marketing or prospecting. And that's when you start to struggle, because it's hard. It's learning a new skill to be able to go out to people who've never heard of you and to get them, find the right people and then get them interested.
Hey,
And that's
Aaron,
why it can be, you know, you have to work on your messaging and, yeah.
you know what? I
Ago?
just, yep, I just had an idea here. We've got people coming in and telling us about their business. So would it make
Yep.
sense if we took like three people and then, you know, you and maybe I could give them a bit of an idea around where we would focus personally in terms of our lead
Yeah.
generation? Would that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
let's do that. If they got, give you some details.
all right. So Alessandra said, I'm a financial advisor specializing in retirement planning. So my guess is she's in the B2C space. So she's probably catering to high net worth individuals and people that are thinking about retirement and planning for their future needs. So any recommendations on lead gen there?
Well, to me, I think a lot of this really depends on your, going back to that sell ideas, not stuff, which is, you know, what do you stand for as an individual? Like, and I know you might be part of a bigger company, but what do you stand for? So what are your ideas? I mean, you can use the company's ideas as well, but especially as a financial advisor, it's important that people trust the company you're with, if you're with one, as well as you. And so, for example, I would have I would suggest starting with live events, because by having live events, it forces you to figure out you know, what is your message and why would people come, and you really get instant feedback as to why they do, you know, they either show up or they don't. And I'm talking about in-person events, by the way. So doing live events to helps you build your audience, it forces you to get clear on what you're doing, and then once you feel ready, I'm actually moving to the next slide, is to focus on partner marketing, where really the best way, like there's lots of, building an audience is hard, but there's already people out there who have built big audiences. Now, if you can partner with them, now whether this is to do a live event together or a webinar. I mean, what Ago and I are doing here is partner marketing, but it's easier because they can bring you people already because they have a trusted audience they can expose to you. It's a lot more effective that way than doing it from scratch. And by doing it with partners, they challenge you to think different, think bigger, and it's a lot more fun. It's more enjoyable. This is our baby daughter Pari on the left, and a 4-year-old son Maverick, who we just brought back from China a few months ago. And of course, they're like little troublemakers together. So that's where I'm gonna go back to this slide. Suggest is live events to get clear on who you're talking to, what they want, and then focus on partner marketing, which I would put the partner marketing would be a form of nets, like a form of inbound marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing, Alessandro, that I would add to that is obviously in your business, which is a business which it's a lot about confidence and the personal relationship. I mean, leverage that word of mouth, leverage those introductions. By the way, one of the things that I think, just an idea here is it's not because the diagram has like 3 distinct sections that they're all separate. You can combine these things very, very well. Let's say that you built a brilliant piece on retirement planning in your marketing effort, a content piece, maybe even a series of videos, and you use an outbound sales effort to ask your existing network to introduce that to their referral network, for example, or to their, to their peers, to their friends. I mean, that's just an example of using all 3. So you can get really, really creative with that. I love the idea of doing personal live events, especially if they're intimate and if they're really composed of people that trust each other. That's really, really, really powerful. And it's another way of zigging when everybody's zagging, right? Everybody's doing,
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron and I, we're as guilty of this as anybody else, but we're doing webinars. We just happen to be 9,000 miles from each other. So it'd be kind of difficult to do an in-person event, but still. But that works really well. Aaron, maybe another one. Here's an interesting one. Daryl sells memberships. So my guess is that he's got some kind of an online membership site, perhaps, and he's looking for ways to get the word out and to get more people to sign up. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's probably pretty similar. Do you know, hey, if you can write in there, Daryl, part of this depends on how much you're selling them for, because if you're selling $10,000 a year memberships, it's a little bit different than $100 a year memberships. So, but what I'd say is, I've never seen people go wrong. I mean, and by the way, if I go back and think about what was it that really got me so much clarity on my message and what I was doing, to the point where I could write a book, and without spending any money on marketing, it becomes a bestseller on Amazon. Because it forced me to, first of all, take action, get clear on who am I going to invite, what am I going to invite them for, why would they care, what's the follow-up. It's not always comfortable, but it really forced me to get clear. And no matter what kind of marketing you do, I don't care if you're buying Times billboards or PPC or prospecting, if you're not clear on who you're targeting, what they care about, what your messaging is, none of your other marketing is going to matter. So everyone's different. A live event could be 4 people for coffee. It could be 400 people in a room. But if you're early in your business, I'm a huge, huge proponent of doing live events with people. By the way, with real people, not just Facebook friends, to, again, force yourself to figure out, get clear on it. So now, if you know that, there's a million ways to do marketing. I'm a fan of partner marketing because it's simpler, it's usually more effective, it's easier, more fun. I like to keep things simple. And there's things like my PPC and SEO and all that stuff. They work for some people. Social media, I mean, I'd say if you love it, go for it. But otherwise, I think if you don't love it, it's a lot of work, and it's hard to, I don't know, it's just not as simple as partner marketing, which is very effective, more enjoyable, and simple. So again, and these are for I'd say lower price, lower value consumer stuff. If you're selling a high value product, like tens of thousands of dollars, whether it's B2B or B2C, prospecting can make more sense, because there you don't if you talk to one person who's the right person, it could make 3 months of work worthwhile. Right? So that's why, again, the value of what you're selling depend on the way you market.
Oh, hey, Aaron. I don't know if you've got a crystal ball or something, but that's the question that sorry, a question that just came in here. Someone selling high-end ERP systems. Interestingly, I
Hmm.
used to sell high-end ERP systems like, CRM systems, ERP systems. I mean, in this environment, outbound sales makes so much sense because you're
Yeah, for
talking
sure.
about a value per sale of hundreds of thousands to, in some cases, millions of dollars. I
Yeah,
mean, this is really where you want to go deep. And you know what? You still need to do the marketing stuff. You still need to put the nets out there. You still need to leverage your seeds. But I would say that here it makes a lot of sense to invest time, energy, effort, and money, financial resources into going deep and doing outbound sales.
yeah, for sure,
Um,
for sure. By the way, so actually let's move on to some details on how that can work. But before I do, for the membership question, Daryl, and I'm sorry for the woman who sold the financial advisor, I would go check out. I don't have the link on here, but go check out predictablerevenue.com/inbound. Predictablerevenue.com/inbound. And on there, you'll find some slides. It says simple, sane, and successful inbound marketing. I think that will give you a little more. There's more detail around, how I think that, how do you have events, and I think there's a bunch more tips that are more specific to that'll be helpful to you. So predictablerevenue.com/inbound. Okay, so let's go to talk about outbound, because if you do sell something, whether it's B2B or some, whatever you sell is worth at least 10, more like 20 or $20,000 and up. Prospecting and outbound prospecting is probably the best way to drive predictable leads, which then of course can drive predictable revenue. But none of this, I mean, I'm going to spend just a minute here on setting specialization, because lead generation doesn't work unless you focus. And if you're a single person, or if you have a team, this idea of specialization is important. Because, for example, with outbound prospecting, the best way to do it is to have a dedicated prospector who's doing it full time, which would be this number one in the top left. So if you actually have a sales team, by far the best thing you can do, and if you take one idea from today, this is specialization, is you have prospectors prospecting in the upper left. You might have lead qualification reps in the lower left responding to inbound leads through your website. And those two roles would pass leads, qualified leads, to your account executives, number three, who close. And then after a customer signs up, then you have post-sales support like account management. Okay, the book has a lot more information, but what I would say is if you are even one person, and of course you don't have multiple people, but you can still specialize your time. Pick a day or two a week, or an afternoon, or at least blocks of 2 hours for your lead generation. Whether it's 2 hours of prospecting, whether it's 2 hours of setting up an event, whether it's 2 hours of whatever you think is the best way to help get the word out. But block out that time, turn off email, shut the door, put the dogs away, whatever it takes for you to be able to focus. So you can still apply this, but just do it by time. Now, because if you're not focused on whatever you're doing, and I'm sure you could apply this to any part of your business actually. So again, this is like, for example, focusing on a niche. Because if you don't have focused time and persistent with it, none of your lead generation is going to be as effective as it could be. Okay, so with that, a few example steps specific to outbound. Now, there's a million ways of marketing, but if you do sell a higher priced product, and I know Ago here will share a story of what he's done with it. Here's an example. We'll call it cold calling 2.0 funnel, because there's no cold calling involved with this approach. The orange is really picking out who you're going to go after, getting really specific, building your list. Smaller, more targeted is better. And then you can send emails or make calls in a way which is friendly. I call it a referral approach, which is whether it's a phone call or email, basically saying, hey, who's the person in charge of X? And maybe include one line, one sentence about what you do or some customers you've helped. But the idea is you're asking in a simple, friendly way for a referral. Starting at the top, maybe asking a CEO or a VP for the referral. And again, what we're seeing is 9% of the time you'll get a response. from people, and this is from people who never heard of you. Now, the response may be a referral to the right person. Like if you want to sell to a CFO, you might get referred to them. Or sometimes the response is not interested or don't know what you're talking about, or no, but you get responses. And again, when you focus on this, and whether you're a single person or better, it's a dedicated prospector, you can turn the responses into conversations, the conversations to appointments, and the appointments into sales. And by breaking this down step by step, you can get to the point where you can turn this into an equation. You know, if I spend 4 hours a week sending emails and I'll get a certain number of responses, and it'll take me a certain amount of time to set up the calls and so on, and you can create some predictable results with this. So again, this is the process that helped almost double Salesforce.com's growth, that helped them add $100 million in revenue. And I've seen this exact process work in, you know, growing a company from 1 million to 20 million in 3 years, or, you know, we often see it can triple. When done right, you can actually triple sort of a company's new sales or new growth with a great outbound process. So this, where are we with answering the ERP salesperson's question?
I think we did it. Let me
Yeah.
share because I said I would, Aaron. So let me share my
Yeah.
own results. And I'm going to contrast two approaches because I get a lot of questions about, does cold calling work? So it's not a question of, if it works or not. It's a question of how well it works.
Mm-hmm.
So and this was about maybe 3 years ago, I started tracking my calls, and I started tracking my dials to my contacts. A contact is defined as talking to the person I wanted to talk to in the first place, right? And I actually was doing, according to some people that I was talking to, I was doing pretty well. So I had about a 20%. So out of every, let's say 100 people that 100 dials, if you will, 100, times where I picked up the phone and dialed the number, I got to talk to 20 people. And out of those 20, another 20% ultimately led to a meeting. So we're talking 5 people out of 100, more or less. That's really that was sort of my conversion ratio, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
When I started implementing your process, um, my results were very, very different. And let me tell everybody what I did. And this was the first time that I did it. There's no big secret there.
So
Um,
you just read the book, right?
well, yeah, I just read the book and
Right.
I thought, how can I use this? How can I make use of this? And so what I did was I literally wrote out 3 cold emails. And they all went something like, according to your sort of, you've got a couple of tips in there. They all went something like, hey, you know what? I represent a company doing this. We typically work with these types of clients. I have no idea who's the right person to talk to internally, but I wonder if you could help me. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
It
It's
wasn't even
simple,
that.
friendly.
Exactly. It wasn't even that long, and it certainly wasn't that commercial sounding. It was more like a friendly email. Hey, you know what? Can you help me out? I'm trying to make sense of, who I should be talking to in the organization. And the response really blew me away. I can't remember the exact response rate, but it was somewhere around, I'd say between 7 and 12%. I remember that. And it also, the reason I can't remember is because now I've done it multiple times and I keep getting the same results. But what's interesting is you get really 3 types of responses. And the responses you get are sorry, not now or not me. And that's actually a minority. That's like 1 or 2 people out of a list like that. The other ones you get is, oh, it's not me you should be talking to, but then they refer you to the right person. And the third response you get is, well, actually, I'm the right person to talk to. Let's set up a meeting. And my meeting conversion or my conversion from email to meeting um, was significantly higher than what I got doing cold calls. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Um, just to really go quickly into it, first off, it's less interruption than it is, making a cold call. And B, it's less commercial, really reaching out to people for help. And then 3 is we're talking about a series. We're talking about 3 emails here. Um, I initially started doing it. I did it the first time, I think maybe a couple of months ago, and it's led to significant results in terms of meetings and actually closing sales so far. So it really works.
Yep. So that's why you can adapt the idea here is that you have a friendly approach, asking for well, you know who you're going after. You have a simple, friendly approach that's a lot more enjoyable for you and them than cold calling, because no one likes that. And you're also tracking how much either time you're spending on it or your activities and results. So you get a sense of you're trying to reduce the randomness and get a sense of, okay, if I need an extra $100,000, how many people should I reach out to over how many weeks, and like, what are the steps, so that you can have some control over generating some predictability for generating your leads and your revenue. But this brings us to a couple tips on actually bringing in revenue. So now this is like a prospecting cycle. It's like prospecting stages, which generally ends up in bringing in pipeline. But the whole idea is everybody's different, especially in professional services. So we're going to share two ideas. Here's one, which is, if you start to step back and really look at breaking down the steps of what you do. So you might have like these leads to prospects, whether it's from, events or from prospecting, who knows, whatever your process is. You said, well, we did X and that brought us Y. People who were even interested, who either attended the event or registered on the site or something. And then there was, of those, some percentage led to a phone conversation or in-person meeting. And of those, a smaller percentage led to a proposal. And of those, a percentage of two actually signed up. And then some others were lost or postponed, and so on. What you're trying to do is just to be insightful around what steps are working for you and how are people moving through a buying process or sales process. And by breaking down your steps into these sort of specific ways, you can start to really hone in on, like, is there a part that just isn't working for you? Right? You might get 100 people to an event or webinar, and then 20 want to talk to you, but then 0 actually end up wanting proposals. Like, okay, well, your front end of the funnel, it gives you a place to focus on to see where can you improve your steps in helping clients buy, the right clients buy. Ago, this is an area that you really like to help people with.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question that, I'm sorry, there's a question that came in from, I think it's Patricia, the name got cut off, or Pat. She says, is that 9% response rate? Is that both positive and negative responses? Or should it be a
Yes.
9% yes rate? No, it's 3, right? It's really, it's negative
Everybody.
response. Yeah, it's negative responses, but those are really a minority. I'm talking 1 to 2% max. Then there's the yeses, and the yeses come in 2 forms. It's yes, it's me, and let's talk, or it's yes, but it's not me, and here's the person you should be talking to. But by now, you've got an internal introduction. I can't remember exactly who said it, but there's some research out there from Steve Bistritz in his book, Selling to the C-Suite. You can check out his interview on my website as well, agocluytens.com. And just Google, sort of search for Bistritz, his name, Bistritz. Anyway, he talks about the ratio, I'm not sure what to call it, but the sort of, approach to meeting ratio. For cold calls, it's less than 20%. Less than 20% of executives would accept a meeting based on a cold call or a cold email. 86% of executives will accept a meeting based on a personal introduction or referral from inside the company. And so even if you're using this process, you're leveraging that, you're harnessing that power. This would have been the only slide that I would have shown for the whole webinar if it was up to me, because this is so key. The one where, actually it was the one we were before, Aaron, the one with the conversion points, the measurement points.
This one?
Yeah, this one here, key metrics and steps. This changed my entire approach to sales, changed my entire thinking about selling and marketing and reaching out. This is so powerful. If you take anything away from this webinar, anything away from this exchange between Aaron and me, it's this. Immediately start putting into place some metrics. I don't care if you use your CRM system. I don't care if you use your fancy marketing automation system, or if you use Excel or even a sheet of paper or a whiteboard, but just measure. Measure your activity and how that converts into the different results across your sales pipeline and into ultimate sales, because that is going to give you so much visibility, so much insight into where you need to tweak your process, and that's what's going to drive results. The one thing I will say on top of that is, don't do this for a month. Do this for 6 months. Do it for a year, and watch the data get richer, and also watch it become more accurate. There will be people, especially in complex B2B sales, which will end up buying 6 months, 9 months, 18 months down the road. That's a conversion, right? So you want to count those. You want to track that over time. All right, moving on.
Okay, one other thing here. This is a baby daughter Pari again, and I think especially for remember the B2C people here listening. I mean, I think it's really helpful if you design a high price package because what I found is if you're getting clear on who your ideal customers are, if they really need what you've got, if you really want what they want you and they want your help, some of your customers, sure, could be a great fit for that $500 a month thing. But another customer who could be very similar, but maybe they want extra help, they could be a good fit for a $5,000 a month thing. So be bold in your pricing. Have maybe a low, medium, and high, but make sure you have a high, like a higher price than you may think, maybe 10 times higher than you think. And again, so there's really two reasons. One is because someone's going to want it. Trust me. I mean, I went with our consulting, we used to have, maybe $25,000 to $60,000 kinds of projects, and our higher end for high touch stuff is $250,000 and up. And some people want it. So one thing is that's a great way to bring in revenue. And the other thing is when you have a high price package, it really helps anchor your value higher so that when you do find someone who's a good fit, but they're not a good fit for the high priced one, they they see your value as higher, so they feel like they're getting a better deal when they go for the medium price package as well. So it's better to be priced, I think, too high than too low when people take you for granted. And it's like, I think it's just very common that companies, or especially individuals, don't have, if you're doing your own thing, you maybe don't have the confidence to have a high-priced offer or package. For again, maybe it might be a small number, but work backwards. If you had something that was priced 5 to 10 times higher than what you're doing now, who would actually need it that badly? So forget about who. You're talking to people who they only want the $2,000 thing, but there is someone out there who would really want and really need your $20,000 package or your $200,000 package. So you have to envision them and work backwards because you may not have met them yet, but they are out there. All right. So if you want some more details from either of us, for me, I've got this website, predictablerevenue.com. If you haven't read the book, I'd highly recommend it. And I think I did mention for that sale ideas, not stuff matrix, it's predictablerevenue.com/matrix. And for the B2C, especially the B2C listeners, just go check out predictablerevenue.com inbound for that simple, sane, and successful inbound presentation. Sure. In fact, by the way, I'll leave our contact information up. So if you have more questions or you want to reach out to Ago about his product, I do consulting, but it's more with bigger company, mid-market and bigger company with teams. It's really specialized in building prospecting teams rather than helping individuals. But here's our info, and then so now why don't we take any and all questions that we got.
Absolutely. All right. So a ton of questions have come in so far. I know we're running slightly late. That's just because Aaron and I talk too much and we have too much in our mind and we want to share it all. But a great question coming in from, probably I should pronounce this, Jorge. And he said, do you have any ideas on how to encourage a sales force comprised of farmers, so people that are highly specialized in one vertical or one market, to go into more of a farmer hunter or hybrid role? So we need to grow the business, but our salespeople are reluctant to explore new verticals, and hiring more people is not an option at this time. Let me go first because I get this all the time.
Sure.
I mean, I work with consultants, partners, managing partners, directors, and they all tell me that, if only I could get more of our consultants to sell more of their time, then, the world would be a better place and we'd have a much bigger and more interesting business. And that is true. There's a couple of thoughts on that. Number one is, forcing people doesn't work. You really want to find the carrot. You want to find not the stick. You want to find the carrot. You want to find ways of motivating these people to do so. And different people are motivated by different things. Don't automatically assume that a bigger bonus is going to do it. Don't automatically assume that putting it in their objectives is going to do it either. A process that I typically do with clients on this, which works really, really well, is we'll start off with an assessment. And the assessment really allows us to categorize people in different categories. People are more hunters or more farmers. People are more ambassadors or more account managers. People are very, very good in going out and generating new business and new conversations, or people are very, very good in deepening and expanding existing relationships. And that kind of gives us a map of the sales force or the team as it looks. And then based on that, we will recommend specific approaches to get specific people to do what they're good at. Because you can't expect really, I mean, this is, again, my personal opinion, and maybe I'm going against the grain here, but it really is my experience that you can't turn a real farmer account manager into a hunter, nor should you try, because that's basically robbing them of their strengths. Um, but something that works really well is you find the individuals that are motivated and able to perform in a particular role, and then you provide them with the support they need. It's not about hiring more people. In fact, hiring more people may actually expand or enlarge the problem if you hire the wrong people. You really want to hire the right people, i.e., the ones you're lacking, and you want to provide incentives for doing so. Aaron, any thoughts on this? You must have come across this 100 times as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like you want people to be able to do what they're good at, and trying to get a bunch of farmers to all hunt is you're just going to waste. It's like salespeople shouldn't prospect. In fact, there's a great article called "Why Salespeople Shouldn't Prospect." If you Google it, um, you have to help them block out. First you have to help them block out time to again focus on, like, they have to, if they're going to prospect, because there's different ways to generate leads, but either they have to have extra time blocked out to do it. You have to help them. Like, if you just tell them to go get business, they're not going to know what to do. So you have to give them direction. I would say help them if you really can't hire. If you can hire one prospector, and you can hire someone out of college with a couple years experience. If you've got a bunch of farmers, and yet maybe, I mean, it can transform your ability to generate leads if you have a focused prospecting team, or even one person who is better, because that gives you, because you really, it's hard to be an expert at it unless you're doing it full time. But if you can't do that, block out some time. I read the predictable revenue, and as Ego said, don't try to, it's like find the people, the smaller number of people who have the higher interest, higher chance of likelihood, and try to get a couple people some success, and then that'll make it easier to show other people how it can be done. Pick your battles.
Hey, Aaron, can I piggyback on that with something real quick? Because I know a lot of people on the webinar are
Yeah.
not going to have, multi-million-dollar prospecting or marketing budgets, and they're not going to be part of big firms, even though some are. But for the ones that aren't, I mean, I run a small, fortunately a growing, but still a small company, a small outfit. And what we've done very successfully is we just outsource lead generation. And it works really, really well. I mean, there's a couple of tricks that you really want to keep in mind, but a great way of doing it is just outsourcing it to people that are really, really good at it. And they don't have to be internal. You need to support them well. You need to reward them well. You need to make sure that you're on the same page and they're well equipped to do their job. But it's just another way of doing it. And this, you can do this on a micro scale. I mean, when I started out, it was just me. And I hired someone to do my lead generation for me. And it really, really works really well. So another question coming in from Rosario. Hey, Rosario, I know who you are. So she says, very refreshing to hear Aaron on there's no need to go to social media, but focus instead on partner marketing. Very powerful. But I have a sense Ago would go for social media, at least some targeting outreach on LinkedIn. Is it dependent on a personal decision or the design of a business model that suits personal preferences, lifestyle, et cetera? Let me go first. I mean, I would not recommend going for social media. It's just something that happens to work for me. And with that, what I'll say is, I think we should all pick the minimum of three and a maximum of five prospecting methods. And what do we call them? Inbound and outbound marketing, or seeds, nets, and spears. It's irrelevant, but pick five. Pick five that work for you. Pick five that you feel comfortable with, and pick five that preferably are in some way, give you either economies of scale or economies of effort. So you can do things like content repurposing, where you'll take one core content piece, but you'll leverage that in different ways. And that works really, really well. So maybe it is a bit of there's the personal preference element. But then the other element to counterbalance that, that's the right hand side of the right side of the brain. And the left side of the brain is really the metrics and measure. I mean, just measure what works. I know, for example, that I get excellent results from certain activities, even though I, personally prefer to do other ones, but obviously I'll put my money on the activities that are bringing in leads and revenue. And so you really want to sort of have that dual way of thinking about prospecting. On the one hand, do things that feel comfortable, that feel right, that are in line with who you are and your unique strengths. But on the other hand, measure, I would almost say obsessively and compulsively, and really figure out what works. Aaron, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, Ago said, I would say pick five sort of lead generation things to try. But if you find something working, if you have one or two or three things that really work, stick to fewer things, doing fewer things better. And we need to simplify our lives. So try a bunch of stuff, but then don't feel like you need to do a bunch of stuff. Just find what works, keep doing it, do more of it. And it really takes baby steps over, I would say years, especially in professional services. This is something, a lot of the stuff, especially if you're smaller, it's probably going to take you years to develop into your messaging, your systems, your lead gen, your sales. And for me, I know I've done sales for 12 years now. It's really the last 2 or 3 years I've really focused, picked my niche, put the book out, and I don't actually really measure that much in data. I guess I could say more intuitive, although I know it's important. But it's really sort of the best-selling book, and I'll probably, we just, working 25 hours a week, we'll probably I do tens of thousands of rev and business each month. But it's really through just, I would say, lots of baby steps, trying lots of things. If it doesn't work, doesn't feel good, stop it. If it either works or feels good, do more of it, time after time. And I just don't like social media. But it's like if you love it, go for it. If you don't like it, don't do it. Plus, that's I guess I can't remember if it's right brain. I guess it's right brain, and then just keep here and there. Like I do like a metric here and there once in a while, but it's not something I spend. I spend more time on my clients' metrics than my own. But I don't know, it's working so far. I think if that's going to sum up, don't discount your feeling. Because some stuff will work but doesn't feel good. Other things may not work at first, but they feel good. But if you keep at it, you can make it work.
Absolutely. Hey, Aaron, I know we're going to need to wrap up here, but I still, for a couple of things. First off, I still see there's questions coming in. What I'd suggest is we're not going to be able to answer all the questions that we got on the webinar. Reach out to either Aaron or me via email or both of us, and we'd be happy to give you some form of a response. If we get enough questions, we may end up writing a blog post together, and then we'll send you the link. We will put up a webinar replay, so if you want to watch this again, then the webinar replay will be up. You are free to watch that yourself. If you feel that's of interest to others, please share that across your social media channels. If you do put on a live event, then you're welcome to use the video in a recording or something. Do connect with Aaron and me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and other forms of social media. We look forward to hearing from you. And with that, Aaron, just one final thought. Any final thoughts of wisdom? What's the one thing that you really want people to remember from this webinar? The one thing that you want to give them that they'll come away with and they'll retain.
Yeah. Well, I would say the practical tip is you need to either specialize. If you have a team of people, you have to specialize them. Or if you don't have a team, you need to block out, specialize your time, because everything else will be harder. It's like trying to drive a car with flat tires if you're not focusing. Then the other sort of, that was the left brain tip. The right brain tip is, business should feel good. Sales should feel good. If it doesn't, something's wrong. Right? The ideal sale is where you get a sale and you feel good and your clients feel good. So if it's not happening, whether it's the process, the kind of work you're doing, the kind of company you're in, the kind of stuff you're selling, the kind of people you're working with, take a hard look at it, because you should not be feeling upset, guilty, depressed, frustrated, anxious, or anything else in what you're doing.
All right. Hey, thanks, Aaron. That was wonderful. I can't believe that, we're like 20 minutes over time and we've still got like 60, 70% of people that started the call with us. I can't thank you enough. And to thank you, I will give you the single most important realization that I had in terms of how to build my business. Once I had this realization, literally everything changed. And that is that a sale is not an event, it is a process. A sale is not an event, it's a process. Once you start realizing that a sale is made after a number of steps and you start seeing the steps for what they are, and you start putting in place very practical, easy to measure metrics, and you start really seeing what works, that's when, and tweaking that and doing more of what Aaron calls doing more of the right things, that's when you start seeing exponential results. I mean,
Yep.
it's like the visual metaphor that I keep having in my mind is, walking on the beach and two people are walking alongside each other, and one person just, shifts their footsteps to the left by maybe, 10 degrees. And then half a mile down the road, you see where they end up. That's really the visual that I want you to have in mind. Measuring is so important. A sale is not an event, it is a process. I just want to say thank you so much for everybody on the webinar. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you've got more questions, reach out to Aaron and me, Twitter, LinkedIn, or email, and we look forward to hearing from you.